outstanding day for the Sportsline Podcast here on the CHCH and Parrot media platforms. I'm Bubba O'Neil. As you all know, this is the podcast that shines a spotlight on teams, athletes, coaches, and executives that come from, reside, or have made their mark in the Golden Horseshoe. Today, we're talking basketball, and although his roots reach all the way back to the New York borough of Brooklyn, it just kind of feels like he's ours. From the time he uttered the word hello, he had the Canadian sports fans in the palm of his hands. As an in-studio or in-game analyst on television or radio, there is not a broadcaster that's more associated with the growth and understanding of basketball in this country. At one time, Jack Armstrong was the youngest coach in NCAA Division I history. Now this natural TV talent has been rewarded with multiple Canadian Screen Awards. He's been so busy with the NBA draft, but so fortunate to have him at least by phone. Thanks for joining us, Jack. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, but great to be on with you. Always tremendous to reconnect with you, and I'm glad you're doing so well there in Hamilton, and excited to join you for a few minutes.
You look, before we get into all the stuff that are the obvious, I do want to know, because I think there's a lot of people that aren't really sure. You started coaching at Niagara University, 1990, 26 years old, youngest coach in D1 history. You were there for 9 seasons, and as you like to say, you got whacked. But why didn't you get back into coaching? And the reason why I say that, you look at Paul Maurice, who's the Stanley Cup champion head coach of the Florida Panthers. He was the second youngest coach in 1995 at 28 years old, and he went on and continued. You never went back. Why?
Good question. And it's funny, I'll never forget, I did an event with Paul Maurice a few days after he got fired by the Leafs. And it was an event for MLSE, and he and I were at the event. And, there was a lot of question whether he'd even show up. And, of course, he did. And he was just a wonderful guy. And I'm so happy for Paul and his success, and a real gentleman and a great coach. For me personally, it was one of those things where, my wife and I adopted 3 little boys, and she's from Niagara. I'm obviously, as you mentioned, from Brooklyn. And it just came to a point where, you say, what do you value? And I knew that if I was going to continue coaching, I'd have to probably move my family 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And I already had the opportunity. I've been an NCAA Division I coach for 14 years, and 9 of those, as you mentioned, as the head coach at Niagara. So I'd already done it. Now, there was a lot of things that, you look back on, you wish you could have accomplished, and you didn't. But nonetheless, when the opportunity happened with the Raptors, I thought I would do it for 1 year and then get back into coaching. And then after that first year, I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. I love this. And I'm happy. And, the old line, don't mess with happy. And I also had a number of coaching friends say to me, wow, you're really happy, you're relaxed, you're enjoying what you're doing, you're around the game, and yet you don't have all the stress and headaches of it. And everybody romanticizes coaching, and you only remember the good times. It's a really hard job. And to me, I think I'm so glad that in my first year or two of broadcasting that I had enough people convince me to say, see it through a little bit more. You got a chance to be really good at this. And now here I am wrapping up my 27th year broadcasting in Toronto. And I'm incredibly grateful that I stayed with it. Now, there are a lot of my coaching friends that have gone on to coach at big schools in the NCAA in the United States and or become NBA lead assistants or NBA head coaches that have made a lot of money. And, there are days you say, well, that would have been nice because you're not getting paid at that level as a broadcaster. But nonetheless, I've had some incredible experiences. It's been great. I'm very grateful to the folks that I've had the opportunity to work for with the Raptors, TSN, everybody involved in my journey over the years that I've had a chance to work for. So I'm grateful. And so I'm really lucky that I'm doing what I'm doing. And I go home after every game, and it's not my problem. I'm undefeated the last 27 years.
What a lot of people forget, and I certainly haven't, is that when you were doing the radio games with Chuck Swirsky, you were working for the Fan 590. So that meant you were actually doing work for Sportsnet in the early days, and that's where I met you, and I was one of the guys in the front row taking down notes for you and editing little packages and that kind of thing. So that's where I got to know you. But then you make the leap to TSN, and that's where everything really kind of blows up. You, along the way, as you said, getting close to 3 decades of doing TV, you've met some amazing people, and it really looked like you settled it. Like, TV was a natural for you. Did you even expect that? When you look back, did you ever think that TV was going to be something that you would be, this long doing?
Well, first of all, it was a privilege working with you at Rogers Sportsnet. We had a great time together, and it's funny, things come full circle now. Rogers just bought MLSE. And, so I've had the good fortune to work for Rogers. I've had the good fortune to work for TSN. I've worked for the Raptors the whole time. And it's a small business, and it's a small fraternity. And I have friends in all places, and I'm very blessed that I can say that, and you being one of them. The TV thing, honestly, I have a bachelor's degree in history from Fordham University in New York, so I can tell you when the War of 1812 was. Congratulations to me. And I have a master's in communications, and people go, wow, you have a master's in communications. This must have been your calling. I'm like, no. It actually, when I was an assistant coach at Fordham, it fit our practice schedule, and a lot of the other majors didn't. So I said, I guess I'll do communications, not knowing even what it was or anything, but I wanted to get a master's degree. And here I am. I kind of fell into it because I got fired as a coach. And, I always say this is a sports version of white-collar crime. It's the greatest scam going. But they put idiot, unemployed coaches on television, and suddenly you become an expert. So, it was I've been really fortunate to work with some phenomenal people in terms of Chuck Swirsky on the radio and then TV, and then obviously Matt Devlin, Paul Jones on the radio, so many great people, Eric Smith and Rob Black, Leo Routens, Alvin Williams, yada, yada, yada. There's so many incredible people I've had a chance to work with, all the phenomenal people at Sportsnet like Brad Fay and Jamie Campbell and the whole crew there, and then all my family now at TSN. So it's just been a lot of fun. And, again, it's a small fraternity. So, people shift, things change all the time, but I'm a big believer. I'm in the people business, and you treat people with respect. You work hard at the job. You're professional. Good things happen.
Let's talk about what happened and just recently wrapped up as the Oklahoma City Thunder are title winners for the first time in at least their franchise history. You could go back to the Seattle franchise nonetheless. It's led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, our Hamilton and proud MVP. When you look at OKC winning, they reached the West semifinals and got taken out in 6 by the Dallas Mavericks last year. Why were they so much better this year, Jack?
Well, a year older, more mature. You need to go through it, and we've seen it with every really good team over the years. You think back to the Pistons and the Bulls and the Celtics and the Lakers. They all had issues and challenges getting by somebody else. And it's just common, and it's understandable. And you look as well, to me, getting Hartenstein and Caruso, adding a little bit more to that second unit, and the depth really made a difference. And obviously, Day was magnificent this year, and he's a year older, more experienced, more polished. And you look at Jalen Williams and Holmgren, The coach was a year older and more mature, and I just think you need to go through the whole thing. And by the way, Dallas, the team they lost to the year before, went to the NBA Finals. So there's something to be said for that, too. So to me, I just think it was their time, and they maximized it. And, I look at a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in terms of growth, ability to adjust, intelligence. He's a savant. He really knows what he's doing out there. And what did he have, 8 turnovers in Game 6 and did not play well. I think he'd be the first to tell you that. And yet you look at how he played in Game 7 in terms of how beautifully he played in terms of his floor game, in terms of his ball protection and his playmaking, his assist-to-turnover ratio in Game 7, in terms of his overall ability to make others better and yet be able to score at a high level. I just think it just shows that the growth, the maturity, the ability to adjust under duress is such an important thing. So to me, I think it's a great sign for their franchise. Now, I look at what's going on in the NBA right now with the salary cap, the first apron, the second apron, the luxury tax, all that. And I do think that Oklahoma City's probably positioned better than anybody else right now to have a longer run. I'm not sure if they can have a long run. It's going to take some incredible management on the part of Sam Presti and ownership commitment in terms of paying the tax to keep it all together. But if there's a team right now that's positioned to have a longer run, I would say it's them. You look at what the Celtics are doing in terms of the slight dismantling of their team, in terms of the Porzingis and Holiday trades and an ownership change there, and, staring at a huge tax bill and Jason Tatum being out with the Achilles tear. There's some pretty quick, sudden decisions that you have to make. And I think the windows for all teams in the league are going to be shorter.
Jack, if I want to go back to SGA for a second, it's funny when I watch him. I mean, his talent is enormous. And at 26, turning 27 years old, one has to believe, I don't even know if he's hit his peak yet. But when I look at the man, I think he's turning into he has the ability, or at least the potential, to be a great Canadian sportsman. And when you look at him yourself, not even just on the court, what do you like about him off the court?
Well, I was at an event, I think it was back in March, and Shai's dad was at the event, and I had a brief chat with him. And I just told him, I said, everyone pats you on the back and says how great a player your son is. I said, I really don't care about that stuff. I mean, yeah, it's great that he's a great player, but you bring up a really interesting point. He's a terrific sportsman. I always used to enjoy Sports Illustrated used to have the Sportsman of the Year. And I look at a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and when I define class and a guy that just carries himself in such a beautiful way, kind of like a Roger Federer, like a humble champion, like a guy that just has an aura about him, just a beautiful soul that, you can look at him and he's a guy, even if you lose to him, you're going to walk over there and shake his hand and hug him because he did it cleanly, he did it right, he did it fairly, played by the rules, played hard, and just represents what a sportsman should be. And, I think in our day and age with social media and the hype train and all that, sportsmanship sometimes gets lost. And he's a true champion not only between the lines, but when he steps away from the lines. And just in terms of how he carries himself, he's a real gentleman. And I think a tremendous role model for young people to say, hey, I want to embody some of the characteristics that he brings in terms of, look, he's a great player. But, it's also just how you conduct yourself. And to me, it's not me, I. It's we, us. and he's very humble in terms of sharing credit and showing appreciation to teammates and everyone within the organization. So when you have a player like that in your organization or in your league, you're blessed, because I think it really brings something really special to the table. And I think it's great for Hamilton. I think it's great for Canada. And I think it's more importantly great for his family, because, they have so much to be proud of, again, more importantly, away from the court. And I'll never forget, I tell this story, people laugh, but it's true. One time I met Amir Johnson, who played with the Raptors for a long time. Amir's one of my all-time favorite Raptors. He's a great guy. And he wasn't a great player. He's a good player. So I met his mother one time, and she came up to me. She says, I watched the Raptor games. She lives on the West Coast in L.A., and I watched the games on satellite, blah, blah, blah. I want to introduce myself. And I just said to her, I said, you know what? You did a great job with your son. Congratulations. I said, good for him. He's a good player. I said, but I really don't care about that. I said, you raised a good son. He's a gentleman. So she started crying. So the next day I see Amir, and he goes, Jack, what's up, man? You made my mother cry. I said, yeah, I did. And he laughed. He said, thank you. He gave me a big hug. He said, that's really nice. She said that made her day. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, as parents, as coaches, as leaders, that's what sports is supposed to be about. It's the formation. It's all the lessons, the life lessons we learn from success and failure, which are both great opportunities for us to grow. And I look at a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in terms of how he handles success and also how he handles failure. And he's a great example of what incredible life lessons sports can help us with and mold us. And more importantly, the people around him, how they've been able to help him along his journey to grow as a young man. And I think that's what this is all about. And unfortunately, sometimes people have lost their minds and lost their way in terms of really, people get so obsessed with money and fame and the bling that they forget that it's still about some 8-year-old little girl shooting at a basket or a 10-year-old little boy in his driveway, and that dream and the sacrifices that teaches you in terms of your development and how you become a better person.
Making me emotional there, Jack. You really are.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's talk about the draft here. I know there's a couple players I just want to quickly run through. You talk about really benefiting. It was a tough year, I think, for Dallas basketball fans, but all of a sudden with the injection of the first overall pick in Cooper Flagg, it looks like the Mavs have a promising prospect to start leading their franchise. What are your thoughts about Cooper Flagg?
Well, they always say the joke, is he a prospect or a suspect? And he's definitely a prospect. And he's better than a prospect. He's got a chance to be really good. Now, is he LeBron James or Victor Wembanyama? Probably not. But is he in that next tier right below that? I would say yes, definitely. I think he, for a kid who should just be graduating from high school right now, he reclassified and played a year in college. But theoretically, he should have been graduating from high school in Maine right now. So to me, first and foremost, he's a remarkable talent with a great head on his shoulders, plays with tremendous intensity. He can score with either hand. He can handle it with either hand. He can score at the rim, mid-range, on the perimeter. He can get after it. He's got a nose for the ball as a rebounder. He can pass it. He can guard his own position. He's a good help side guy. He's got a big-time motor. And he's just got a winning mentality. And for him to be blessed to have a guy that was a Hall of Fame player as his coach in Jason Kidd, one of the all-time really smart point guards we've ever had, and then to have Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, and Kyrie Irving, all three guys that will end up in the Hall of Fame, to break in on a team with those guys that are going to help him so much. and on a team in general that is a winning program. Now, look, it's all the drama with Luka Doncic. I get all that, but I think it was a mistake to trade him. But nonetheless, they've been a winning organization. So he's walking into something, and he doesn't have to go play for the Wizards or the Charlotte Hornets or the Utah Jazz or something like that. He gets to jump on a moving train that's heading in the right direction. And particularly when Kyrie's healthy, and whenever that'll be, they got a chance to be really good.
I look at what the Raptors did at number 9 and Colin Murray-Boyles, and I just look at some tape of him, lightly scouting, and the one thing I see about him is effort level. It looks extremely high. It looks like there's certainly work to do in terms of adjusting to the NBA. But what else are your thoughts about the Raptors' first overall draft pick?
Well, I think it's the old line. You got to be loyal to your board, and if he was the ninth guy on their board, then you got to take him, because you're in a position where you're constantly adding talent. This is a jigsaw puzzle. There are a lot of moving parts, and who's to say what they'll do tonight in the second round? Who's to say what they'll do here in the next few days between now and free agency starting in terms of trades? So who's to say they didn't pick him for somebody else? I don't know. I have no idea. And that's the same that could be said for all the other teams. So there's so much movement that's still going to happen. Look, he's got a great motor defensively. I love him as a defender, a rebounder. I think his offensive game facing up is a little raw. He'll score at the rim and score in a passionate, intense way around the bucket. But, the face-up game and the shooting's got to improve. But I think he's a guy that is got a chance to be a very good pro over the long haul. Is he a little undersized? Yeah. Is he somewhat a little bit like Mobo, their 31st pick last year out of San Francisco? Yeah, a little bit. Does your franchise lack a little shooting right now? I'd say yeah. But again, it's the jigsaw puzzle. It's the big picture. I don't freak out or I don't get too excited about picks, because I usually want to see the dust settle when we get into the second week of July and everything settles down and summer league starts in Vegas and kind of people have a sense of what their training camp roster is going to look like in October. Then it's a better time to say, hey, is my team good enough? What are the holes? Or on the other hand, man, I'm really excited about my team. Look at the things that they have going. And again, that's any fan base that's going to ask those questions. But I don't think today is the day to ask them. I think in about 2 weeks is when the dust settles. You see free agency, you see the trades, you see the draft picks, and now you go, okay, now this is what it's going to look like.
Jack, I can hear excitement. I can hear passion in your voice. I've been very fortunate to be beside you. I hope the next time we chat, you can come into the CHCH studios. But what we have here and just chatting with you and talking about SGA and the draft and, of course, your career, we're real lucky in this country to have you in terms of the basketball knowledge you have and that you've really spread to so many people. And your excitement for the sport has got a lot of us excited as well over the decades of you being on television. We appreciate you. And thanks again for joining us on the Sportsline Podcast. I hope we can do this again.
Oh, but my pleasure. And you make sure you ask that guy, Ron Foxcroft, my appearance here now. Do I get a day at Hamilton Country Club or Burlington Country Club of golf? What's the what's the deal here? We got to ask our guy Foxy what's going on, because he's the Pied Piper at both clubs. So I knew him when.
Well, we're going to set it up. It'll be Stevie Foxcroft and me versus you and the old man.
I'll tell you what, the old man's a pretty good player, so watch out.
I know, and I'm not.
Join the club. I hear you, Bubba.
Thanks again, Jack.
All right, all the best.
Take care. Well, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports, especially with people so passionate, just like Jack Armstrong. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, we always appreciate your comments. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thanks to you so very much. And we'll see you soon